There and back again. A Goggins Tale. Part 6. The Breaking of the Fellowship. Who's gonna carry the boats? They had been made to paddle non-stop the entire morning at the insistence of an overly energetic Mr. Goggins, who had maintained a constant stream of encouragement and profanity since departure. Such had been the effect of this bellowing and barking. The company found themselves subconsciously repeating his phrases as their aching arms pulled at the waters with the smooth elven paddles. Uncomfortable with the leisurely flow of the river, Goggins urged the company to paddle with ferocity. "Ah, Bill, you ought to have stayed in Bree," reminisced Sam, who had developed a fondness for the pony. "Man, he gonna be eating good with those elven niggas," reassured Goggins, patting Sam on the back. Bill the pony had been left behind to graze the fragrant grass of the elves as their narrow boats were unfit to bear such a creature. Despite missing the serene calm of Lothlorien, the company were, for the most part, in high spirits. All but the dwarf remained upbeat. "Galadriel," he whispered mournfully to himself, reminiscing long over the gentle elven lady. "I know what you sayin', dude," consoled Goggins, overhearing Gimli's whispers as he shared the same boat as the dwarf and elf. "I got fond memories of that bitch myself." As they continued down the river Anduin, the day turned to night. The Fellowship set up camp along the riverbank and slept. Goggins and Aragorn were on watch, their eyes scanning the darkness, when a rustle in the brush caught their attention. "What was that?" Aragorn asked, his hand instinctively going to his sword. "Just keep your head on a swivel," Goggins hissed in reply. "Slimy motherfucker could be hiding anywhere." Goggins reached into his pack and pulled out a stun grenade, holding it in his hand like a coiled viper ready to strike. "When this goes off, be ready to grab that piece of shit," he whispered to Aragorn, his eyes never leaving the shadows. Gollum's slithering form darted out from the brush, his eyes glinting in the moonlight. Before he could scuttle away, Goggins hurled the grenade. The stun went off with a deafening bang, lighting up the trees in a blinding flash. At that exact moment, Gandalf, who had been quietly resting nearby, clutched his chest, gasping for air. "By the Valar," he rasped, his face pale. Goggins was on him in a flash, his hands moving quickly. "Shit, the motherfucking wizard's having a heart attack," he barked, immediately administering first aid. Aragorn rushed over, pulling out some leaves of Athelas, the healing herb of kings. "These may help," he offered, reaching toward Gandalf. Goggins shot him a scathing look and barked, "Man, put that shit away. You think your damn oregano can fix everything? This ain't no cold remedy. I'm trying to save this motherfucker's life." Aragorn sheepishly tucked the Athelas back into his pouch. Goggins tore open his backpack, pulling out a bottle of aspirin, which he swiftly crushed between Gandalf's lips. Not content with just the aspirin, Goggins smirked and whipped out a small adrenaline shot and injected it into the old wizard's arm. In seconds, Gandalf's eyes shot open, pupils dilated and wide, as he sprang to his feet with a surprising burst of energy. What power is this?" the wizard exclaimed, practically vibrating with vitality. Without missing a beat, Gandalf spun around and, in a frenzy of unexpected vigor, began to deliver a flurry of strikes at the now recovering Gollum, whose disoriented state left him an easy target. The Fellowship gathered around, shaken by the explosive moment but relieved at their successful capture. Gollum, now thoroughly battered, lay groaning at their feet. Goggins glanced down at the pitiful creature, disgust on his face. "Slimy ass bitch," he muttered, kicking a small amount of dirt towards Gollum's trembling form. Gollum was bound in ropes, mumbling incoherently about his precious, while Gandalf, still pulsing with renewed energy, paced back and forth, muttering about the strange power of Goggins' methods. Frodo, wide-eyed, finally broke the silence. "Is Gollum dangerous?" he asked, eyeing the creature warily. "Dangerous? Nah. He's been sucking off those Mordor orcs," replied Goggins, leaning in toward Frodo. "I say we cut his nuts off, man. He ain't gonna need them anyway." "I don't think we should," answered Frodo. Why? You want to suck 'em? I knew you were a faggot. No, I just pity the poor creature. Fuck that. Gimli, bring your axe. Goggins shouted across to the dwarf. We gonna see what this little bitch is packing under that cloth. Frodo looked around for support as Goggins pinned down a terrified Gollum, but Gandalf had run off into the bushes and Aragorn raised no objection. Clearly, he did not like the creature. We cannot, he began an objection, but he was immediately shut down by Goggins. Man, shut your ass up. A gasp filled the clearing as Gollum's loincloth was removed. Damn, looks like someone got there first, said Goggins awkwardly. He glanced around for a moment before covering Gollum again. I see why you all fucked up now, he said to the pitiful creature. Them LGBTs in Mordor made you trans. Gollum did not respond. He curled into a ball on the ground and began whimpering. That's fucked up, said Goggins to the group around him. They took that lil nigger's precious, all right. He stooped down and addressed Gollum in a softer voice this time. Man, that ain't right. I promise you, if you help us, we'll get you your revenge, and Gimli here, and his people will make you a new one. They're good with that type of shit. A new one, whispered Gollum hesitantly, uncurling himself to look at Goggins. We wants it. Damn right, man, a big prosthetic one. You can smash as much as you want then. Get you some of that orc pussy. The fear slowly left Gollum's face, to be replaced with a more hopeful expression. We swears to help you, master. Good. Where the enemy at? They are coming, master. A large group of Uruks. We saw them with the white hand. They're a day's march from us. Good. Gimli, untie his ass. Gollum, you're part of this company now. If you fuck up, I'ma have Gimli take your leg with that axe. Then we see how your ass climbs trees. Aragorn again looked in awe at his fellow ranger. Truly, he is more worthy of the kingship than I, he whispered to himself. Goggins then stood to address the company. Right, we got enemy inbound. I say we find higher ground and fortify. Then we must go to Ammon Hen. It's half a day from here. We can make our defense there, said Aragorn. But there, we must also decide our direction. Do we head directly to Mordor or make our path via Rohan and Gondor? Any other suggestions? Asked Goggins. We could make directly for Gondor and attempt to outrun the enemy, suggested Boromir. Negative. These lil bitches would get outrun by little kids, responded Goggins, gesturing towards the hobbits. Looks like we're hitting the hilltop then. Get some rest. We head out at 0600 hours. The night's tension slowly dissipated as the Fellowship returned to their resting spots, though none would sleep quite as easily with Gollum now in their midst, resting for the moment by a tree. As dawn broke over the river Anduin, the Fellowship rose early, weary but resolute. Goggins, always the first to rise, stood by the tree where Gollum lay curled up, his watchful eyes scanning the horizon. He clapped his hands loudly, jolting the group awake. All right, rise and grind, bitches. We've got enemy coming in hot, and we ain't waiting around for those slimy fuckers to catch up, Goggins barked. We head for the hills. Move, bitches. Aragorn and Boromir began organizing the company while Goggins stood over Gollum, who uncurled himself and stretched, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and newfound devotion. You ready to get some payback, lil homie? Goggins asked, looking down at Gollum. Yes, we help. We helps the master, Gollum replied eagerly. Suddenly, a loud crashing noise erupted from behind them. They all whipped around, weapons at the ready, only to see Gandalf stumble out of the trees, branches, and twigs tangled in his hair and beard. His robes were torn, and he looked thoroughly disheveled. He staggered a few more steps, his eyes wide before collapsing face first into the dirt with a heavy thud. Goggins rolled his eyes, though there was a smirk tugging at his lips. Damn wizard must be coming down off that shot of adrenaline. The others rushed to Gandalf's side, while Goggins stood back, hands on his hips, shaking his head. "Told you not to go running off like a crackhead." Aragorn knelt beside the wizard, checking his breathing. He's alive, but he's completely exhausted. Gandalf groaned, barely able to lift his head. "By the Vala, I feel like I've been trampled by a Mumakil," he rasped, struggling to sit up, but he had no strength left. His limbs were limp, his usual dignified aura replaced by utter weariness. "Get him into one of the boats," Aragorn instructed. "He can't walk any further, and we still have to reach Amon Hen before the Uruks regroup." Sam and Boromir carefully helped lift Gandalf into one of the narrow elven boats, his body slumping against the side. His usually sharp eyes were now half closed, his energy drained from the unnatural surge of strength that had pushed him beyond his limits. As they prepared to leave, Frodo approached Goggins. "Is he going to be okay?" Frodo asked, concern etched on his face as he glanced at the weary wizard. Goggins waved a dismissive hand. "He'll be fine. He just needs to sleep it off, like a hangover from the hardest damn workout of his life." With Gandalf securely placed in one of the boats, the Fellowship resumed their journey. They paddled upriver toward the hills, the tension in the air still thick as they knew the enemy was close. Gollum, now swimming alongside one of the boats, muttered to himself, casting furtive glances at Frodo's pack, where the ring was hidden. Gandalf lay motionless in the boat, his breathing steady but deep, a few twigs still stuck in his hair. Occasionally, his hand would twitch, and he'd mutter something unintelligible, but otherwise, he was completely out of commission. "I've never seen Gandalf like this," Merry whispered to Pippin as they paddled. "He's usually the one saving us." "Well, after Mr. Goggins saved him with that special medicine, he ran as fast as a horse," Pippin replied. "He'll need to sleep for a week to recover from that." The boats continued to glide silently along the river, the forest on either side growing denser as they neared the hill of Amon Hen. Goggins kept his eyes on the surroundings, ever alert for any sign of the enemy. As they approached the foot of the hill, Goggins called out, "All right, time to stash the boats. We'll fortify the ruins at the top." The company dragged their boats onto the shore and prepared for the steep climb. Gandalf was still out cold, so Goggins lifted him in army fashion and carried the unconscious wizard up the hill. Despite the situation, the sight of Gandalf, the once mighty wizard, now limp and draped over Goggins' back, drew some chuckles from the group. Goggins, ever the motivator, took one last glance at Gandalf before turning to the rest of the Fellowship. Aragorn stooped to the ground, putting his ear to a rock and listened. He rose after a couple minutes. "The earth is disturbed by their accursed feet. There are very many of them, within a league of us. They will be upon us within the hour." "Right, let's fortify this bitch," Goggins announced, taking charge. He pointed to the dwarf and elf. "You two, scout the perimeter. Make sure nothing sneaks up on us. Frodo, Sam, you guys stay close to Gandalf." "They're close," said Legolas, returning from his scouting mission. Goggins cracked his knuckles, his eyes gleaming with the anticipation of battle. "Good, let's fucking wake Dumbledore." He leaned over Gandalf and administered another shot of adrenaline. Immediately, into the surprise of all, the wizard once again shot up just as Uruks appeared and charged without warning, their guttural roars filling the air. The Fellowship braced for impact, ready to defend their position. Forward leapt the wizard, staff forgotten. He drew his sword and with an enormous bellow fell upon the enemy with a ferocity that put Aragorn and Boromir to shame. They watched with amazement as he clove through the foremost Uruks. "Stay hard, motherfuckers. Harder than you've ever been," barked Goggins as the Fellowship rushed to meet the oncoming horde. The moment was chaotic, yet exhilarating. Boromir and Aragorn, momentarily stunned, swiftly joined the fray, their swords flashing as they fought back the tide of enemies pouring in. Legolas, from a vantage point higher up the ruins of Amon Hen, eagerly loosed bullet after bullet, finally having opportunity to test out the new weaponry Goggins had designed for him, each round finding its mark with deadly precision. Goggins, eyes wild with focus, stayed at the rear of the fight, barking orders like a general, motivating the Fellowship with his usual blend of profanity and intensity. Ain't nobody dying on my fucking watch. You think these ugly-ass motherfuckers gonna take pity on your sorry asses? Hell no. Keep swinging, keep moving. Gandalf, now in the thick of the fight, moved like a whirlwind. The enemy had never seen anything like it. The wizard had become a force of nature, as if his adrenaline-powered fury gave him the strength of 10 men. He fought like a man possessed. Boromir, panting as he fought beside Aragorn, glanced over at Gandalf and muttered, "What in Middle-earth did the Lord Goggins give him?" Suddenly, an Uruk broke through the line and rushed toward Frodo, but the hobbits were ready. Their brutal training with Goggins had changed them. Sam, loyal as always, intercepted the Uruk's wide swing, allowing Frodo an opening to dart in and stab with sting, straight into its black heart. "The hobbit's bite is deep," cheered Aragorn, who had seen from the corner of his eye. With the tide turning against the enemy, their morale began to crumble. The fierce resistance of the Fellowship, bolstered by Goggins' leadership and Gandalf's ferocity, was proving too much for the enemy to handle. One by one, they began to retreat, their fierce roars turning to panicked cries as they fled toward the woods. Amidst the chaos, Goggins caught sight of an Uruk stumbling over the rocky terrain, desperately trying to escape, and sprinted after him, leaping over fallen bodies and rubble. In seconds, he closed the distance, tackling the filthy creature to the ground. The Uruk let out a snarling growl, thrashing in an attempt to free himself, but Goggins quickly subdued him with a swift punch to the face, knocking him out cold. The company gathered around as Goggins dragged the unconscious Uruk into their midst. "Wake this motherfucker up," he growled. Gimli pulled out a water flask and splashed it over the creature's face. The Uruk jerked awake, his yellow eyes glaring with fury, but the sight of Goggins and the Fellowship standing over him quickly drained the defiance from him. "You got one chance, otherwise my man Gimli here's gonna start by taking a foot," said Goggins, gesturing menacingly to Gimli, who was busy wiping the blood from his axe. "Where you from, motherfucker? Who sent your ass?" The Uruk's gaze flicked nervously from Goggins to Gimli's blood-stained axe, then back to Goggins. His heavy breathing slowed, as if calculating whether to cooperate or face the dwarf's blade. "We march from Isengard. The White Hand, Saruman sends us," the Uruk hissed, trying to sit up. "We were ordered to capture the halflings and bring them to him." Goggins nodded slowly, crouching down to meet the Uruk's eye level, a smirk forming on his lips. "Where's the rest of your fighters?" The Uruk hesitated before growling, "More come. More follow. The land swarms with us. You won't escape." Goggins glanced over at Aragorn and Legolas, who exchanged worried glances. Then he looked back at the Uruk and let out a low whistle. "Man, I'll fuck your people up. You ain't no Taliban, and we bombed the shit out of them." He stood up. "All right, Gimli. Do your thing." The dwarf grinned wickedly, raising his axe, and with one swift motion, he brought it down, as promised, upon the Uruk's foot. The crunch of bone echoed through the clearing, and the Uruk let out a blood-curdling scream of agony. Gimli grunted with satisfaction, raising his axe again, preparing to put the Uruk out of his misery. As the Uruk writhed on the ground, Gollum, who had been lurking in the shadows, scuttled forward with surprising speed. His eyes gleamed with something darker than his usual. "We hates them, precious. We hates the nasty Orcsies." Before anyone could react, Gollum lunged at the creature with terrifying force, sinking his sharp teeth directly into the creature's groin. The watching company collectively winced, clenching as they turned from the scene, their faces twisting in disgust and pain as the Uruk howled in agony. Boromir winced, muttering under his breath, "What is this madness?" After Gollum had had his fill, the Uruk was left groaning and almost unconscious upon the ground. With a swift and brutal efficiency, Goggins finished the creature off, delivering a fatal blow to its skull with his boot. The lifeless body slumped to the ground. Mission accomplished. "Let's move out," said Goggins. The rest of the fellowship exchanged uneasy glances. Even after all they had seen, this level of brutality still gave them pause. Frodo looked down at the scene, a shadow of doubt crossing his face. He caught Aragorn's eye, and for a brief moment, the ranger understood the hobbit's concern. "We must decide our course first," said Aragorn. "It is for the ring-bearer to decide," announced Gandalf. Now joining the company, he looked to have returned to his usual calm. "What happened to you, Gandalf?" asked Frodo, full of concern. "A madness took me, but it has passed," he replied, giving Goggins a small nod of gratitude before continuing his address of the group. "There are but two choices, taking the ring directly to Mordor or going south through Rohan and Gondor. This decision rests with Frodo." Frodo did not provide an immediate response. He looked deeply troubled. "Well," prompted an impatient Goggins, "give me 1 hour to decide. I need space to think." Gandalf nodded, and the little hobbit walked off alone towards the top of the hill. As Frodo walked away toward the peak of Amon Hen, with the weight of the decision bearing down on him, the fellowship remained behind, watching him go in silence. "Man, this ain't no time for motherfuckers to be second-guessing. We ain't fighting fucking ISIS here," shouted Goggins in frustration as he paced back and forth. Aragorn stood with his arms crossed, gazing at the distant horizon. "We must respect Frodo's decision. The weight of the ring is his alone to bear." Boromir, still nursing the lingering temptation of the ring's power, kept a close eye on Frodo as he disappeared from view. His thoughts swirled with desire and doubt. He had been so close to seizing the ring before, and even now, the allure tugged at him. But the silence was short-lived. Boromir, unable to contain himself, quietly slipped away from the rest of the group and began following Frodo up the hill. His footsteps were careful, his breath steady, as he closed in on the ring-bearer. Frodo, lost in his own thoughts, didn't notice Boromir approaching until it was too late. He turned just in time to see the man standing behind him, his expression a mix of desperation and longing. "Frodo," Boromir said softly, "I didn't mean to frighten you. I just wanted to talk. The ring, it is a gift, Frodo. Why not use it?" Frodo backed away, his hand instinctively clutching the ring beneath his shirt. "No, Boromir. You don't understand. The ring is evil. It cannot be used." Boromir's eyes darkened, his voice rising. "It is power. Power that we can wield for good. Give it to me, Frodo. I can protect us. I can protect Gondor." Frodo, now frightened, turned to run, but Boromir caught his arm. "Frodo, don't you see? I only want to protect my people. We can end this war. Let me go." Frodo cried, struggling and managing to break free. The ring cannot be used. Boromir lunged forward, his voice rising in anger. "You're a fool if you believe that. It is a gift, and you would let it go to waste." A sudden rustle from behind provided enough distraction for Frodo to put on the ring and vanish. Goggins had been watching, ever the vigilant soldier, and now he appeared from the shadows, moving with silent precision. His eyes locked on Boromir, who had taken a threatening step toward Frodo. "Oh, hell no," Goggins growled under his breath, recognizing Boromir's intentions. Without hesitation, Goggins leapt forward and tackled Boromir to the ground, using his Brazilian jiu-jitsu skills to subdue the much larger man. Boromir struggled, but Goggins was too fast, too strong. He quickly wrapped Boromir up in a rear-naked choke and squeezed. "I got some jiu-jitsu ready for your ass," snarled Goggins as Boromir thrashed beneath him. "Tap out, motherfucker." But Boromir, unfamiliar with the concept of tapping out, continued to fight, his face turning red as he gasped for air. Goggins, sensing Boromir's confusion, tightened his grip, determined to put him out before he could do any more damage. Boromir's struggles grew weaker until, at last, his body went limp in Goggins' arms. "Man, you gotta know when to quit." A few moments later, The rest of the Fellowship arrived, alerted by the commotion. Aragorn and Legolas rushed to Boromir's side, checking to make sure he was still breathing. Gandalf, who had now fully recovered from his earlier surge of energy, stood over the scene with a grim fury. Boromir began to stir, groaning as he came to. His eyes blinked open, and he found himself surrounded by the Fellowship. "Fool, you let the ring take hold of you." Gandalf's gaze was stern as he addressed Boromir. "He tried to steal the precious," hissed Gollum. Boromir, shame flooding his face, struggled to sit up. I'm sorry. I could not resist it. Its power, it was too much." Goggins crossed his arms, shaking his head in disgust. "You a treacherous motherfucker." "Mr. Frodo!" shouted Sam in panic. "Where's Mr. Frodo?" "He ran off like a little bitch, Sam." "Let's go find him. The rest of you, rehabilitate this sneaky fucker. Rendezvous back at the boats in 20 minutes. And with that, Sam and Gollum took off. Meanwhile, Frodo now stood at the edge of the great river, his heart pounding as he thought of his companions. His mind raced. The burden of the ring was too much for anyone else to bear. It had already started to twist the others. Boromir had almost taken it by force. No, he couldn't risk them falling to its power. This was his burden alone. His decision made, Frodo's hands trembled as he began stepping into the small boat, ready to push off and continue on the quest to Mordor, alone. But before he could set off, he heard heavy footsteps behind him. Goggins was there, his eyes blazing with rage. "Frodo, where the fuck you going, man?" Frodo froze, turning to face Goggins. The intensity in his friend's expression frightened him. "I'm going to Mordor. Alone. The ring. It's too dangerous. It's affecting everyone. I can't let it destroy them. Destroy us." Goggins shook his head in frustration. "You think that's an acceptable answer, soldier? Just fucking off into Mordor by yourself. You lost your motherfucking mind, son. You ain't hard enough for that. I have to." Frodo shouted, his voice strained, almost pleading. "It's my burden. My responsibility. I cannot ask anyone to bear it for me." "What burden? It's a fucking ring, man. You ain't carrying a 100-pound backpack across Afghanistan, motherfucker." Goggins stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "Don't give me that noble shit, you faggot. You think going off alone is going to protect us? You walking straight to the enemy ain't no grand sacrifice. You got shit for brains, son. You a selfish motherfucker." Frodo recoiled at the words, his eyes wide. "Selfish? How? I'm trying to save you. Save all of you." But Goggins wasn't backing down. His fists clenched at his sides as he leaned in, voice low and dangerous. "You think you're gonna walk your pansy ass into Mordor through an army of orcs, ring wraiths, and drop that evil cock ring in the fire like it's a fucking day trip? I can't ask you all to come with me, friend Goggins," Frodo stammered, his resolve cracking. "Fuck you, man." Goggins spat. "You think you're protecting us by going alone? You're setting us all up, you little piece of shit. You gonna get captured, and then we all fucked. All so you could play the fucking martyr?" Frodo's hands were shaking now, his eyes welling with tears. "Mr. Goggins, please, understand." "Nah, motherfucker," Goggins snapped. "You ain't going anywhere. Get your motherfucking ass back on land now." Frodo tried to speak, but no words came out. Goggins stepped even closer. "You ain't dragging the rest of us down with you by pulling this solo bullshit. Not when I got me some elf bitches to smash when I get back." For a long moment, there was silence between them. Slowly, Frodo lowered his head, tears slipping down his cheeks. I didn't mean." "Man, you ain't right for this ring-bearer shit," said Goggins, looking down upon the little hobbit in disgust. "That fat motherfucker Sam got balls twice the size of yours, man." Frodo nodded weakly. They were joined by the rest of the company as they dragged the boat back onto the shore, all oblivious to what had transpired moments before. "What is the ring-bearer's decision?" asked Gandalf. But it was Goggins who answered. "We take Boromir's ass back to Gondor first, then approach Mordor from the west." "So be it," responded Gandalf, bowing his head. "The ring goes south."
Thanks for joining us on this adventure. If you enjoyed the journey and are eager for more wild fan fiction, don't forget to hit that like button, share with your fellow fans, and subscribe for more episodes. And if you're as enchanted by the idea of Middle-earth meeting Hogwarts as we are, make sure to check out our series exploring this magical crossover. Your support brings these worlds to life. Until next time, keep the fantasy alive.